Welcome back to Conversations for Change, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm very excited about today's show. We have two incredible guests on that are really doing some important work for the community, for our veterans, really just interesting things we're going to talk through. But first and foremost, thank you for joining us from LinkedIn, from YouTube, from our website, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome. Really appreciate you giving us a little bit of your time. And thank you. And if you have questions or comments, please go into the comment chat and please share there. We're happy to address anything that we can here. But first and foremost, I wanted to welcome our guests today. There's two folks on the line that I'm really excited to talk about. First and foremost is Erin Fletcher from the Wounded Warrior Project. Erin, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Sure. Thanks for being on. And Jason Major, an Army veteran. First off, Jason, thank you for your service. Really appreciate it. And welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
No problem. It's absolutely my honor. So I just to give everyone who's not familiar with CFC or Conversations for Change here at Litify, and Litify, we're a cloud-based solution for legal professionals built on the Salesforce platform. Just doing really, really great work for our clients and helping them really deliver a better client experience and grow and become more efficient. But we launched Conversations for Change sort of in conjunction with that to really kind of coincide with our efforts on our litify.org side, which is our volunteering charity side of our business. So we do this monthly series called Conversations for Change, and we really try to have a thought-provoking discussion around something that's topical. And today it's kind of put between Veterans Day and Thanksgiving, two opportunities, I think, to really reflect on, who we are as people, who we are as Americans, who we are just in general. So we thought the Wounded Warrior Project and really an individual who's gone through that program would be a great way to really highlight and put a spotlight, frankly, on that whole side of what's going on there. So I mentioned Erin from the WWP, but Erin, I'd love for you just to share a bit about the program, about the organization, what you do, kind of what you're seeing. Would love for you to share a bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. So to start, Wounded Warrior Project's mission is to honor and empower wounded warriors. And we started in 2003 with a simple goal of delivering comfort items to wounded veterans in our military hospitals. And so we were delivering backpacks to our military servicemen and women at bedside. And so these, comfort items, it was, clean t-shirts and new socks and, some toiletries and just something to kind of have there when they first wake up kind of, in the hospital. And from there, we've grown to provide programs in mental and physical health and wellness, career counseling, and then long-term rehabilitative care.
Excellent. You kind of ripped that off pretty quickly, but there's a lot there, right? There's a lot of need, I'm sure, along those lines as well. Yeah. One of the biggest, you mentioned in passing there, but one of the biggest areas I think is in sort of the mental health components and the health programs that you run. Can you share a little bit about that and maybe even some of the statistics around the veterans that partake and just some of the needs that are out there as you see them?
Absolutely. So to kind of start, we know there's an estimated 600,000 post 9/11 veterans. And I should have probably mentioned this in the beginning. Wounded Warrior Project serves our post 9/11 veterans. And so over 600,000 of those individuals live with post-traumatic stress. And so post-traumatic stress is a normal reaction for anyone who experiences trauma. And I think that's really important to emphasize. And it's also important to note that post-traumatic stress doesn't just happen in those who have served in the military. Civilians can experience post-traumatic stress, again, in response to a traumatic event. But what we know for our military servicemen and women, oftentimes they suffer in silence, in realizing that they're not alone in their struggles and these challenges. And so we know it's so important to bring warriors together out of that isolation, because we know that isolation contributes to, negative mental health. And we don't want folks to suffer alone. We don't want them to feel like they just have to kind of pull themselves up by their bootstraps and just sort of get through this. We want them to know that they're not alone, and that there's connection, and they can find a new sense of purpose outside of the military. And so one of our biggest goals is to get them connected with other veterans and families. And as I mentioned, Wounded Warrior Project does that in a variety of ways. So I'll kind of touch on right now several of our mental health focused programs. So first, we have our Wounded Warrior Project Talk program. And this is a telephone support line for veterans or family members to talk with a Wounded Warrior Project teammate every week. This is not therapy. This is a non-clinical program. However, it provides a place for the veteran or their family support member to talk through challenges, receive support. They set goals, and then they have that Wounded Warrior Project teammate to help them be accountable for these goals. And this is something that's really consistent, especially for some of our folks that are the most isolated. They can count on this 20-minute phone call every week from a Wounded Warrior Project teammate to help them, again, move towards their goals and their values. We have our Project Odyssey program, which is our outdoor mental health workshop. And warriors start with a multi-day event, whether in person or virtually. So we've had to kind of pivot in response to the pandemic to offer virtual programming. And so they start with this multi-day event, and they get with other veterans that are going through similar challenges. They're learning new coping skills. They're building a new support structure. They're getting that sense of camaraderie again. And then after that multi-day event, they team up with another Wounded Warrior Project teammate to set a goal, and then again, follow through on these goals, have that accountability partner, and have that support. Because we don't want it to just be, wow, that was an awesome 3 to 4 days. I'm feeling really great. And then I go home and I don't feel like I have that sense of connection. We're still there, and we're there to help. And then we have our Wounded Warrior Project Warrior Care Network. And this is our clinical treatment option. And this is a program to help address post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. And we work with 4 world-renowned academic medical centers across the country to provide this life-saving treatment at no cost to warriors or their families. And I should note, none of our programs come at a cost. We believe that our warriors and our alumni have paid their dues on the battlefield, and we don't want costs to be prohibitive to them in any way.
That is really traumatic. Yeah, I think we take that for granted, really, as Americans, and I don't. I'll stop myself from going off on a tangent there, but I mean that is just really, really great that you guys do that. One of the things and Jason, I would love for you to share, a bit about your story in a moment, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit, but it sounds like there's a structured component to it, which from what I understand, leaving, going from military life to civilian life, part of that structure piece is one of the things that is missing. So providing some of that in terms of the follow-up and the consistency with the program, I think is probably very helpful. But I'm putting words in your mouth, Jason. I shouldn't do that. Maybe you could just share a little bit about your story, your journey so far, and give us a little bit of insights of what you've seen with the project.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined the Army in 2003. Was a combat engineer. Did 2 tours to Iraq. And in my second tour, I was wounded by an IED. And my first experience with Wounded Warrior Project was getting a backpack. And, the medics had torn all my clothes off of me. I was completely naked in a hospital gown in Iraq. And inside the backpack were sweatpants, socks, a T-shirt, some playing cards, toiletries. And it just made me feel like a human again instead of a patient. So, and over the years, I went to almost all their events, Project Odyssey being one of them, the Soldier Ride, which I really enjoyed, and that got veterans together to have that camaraderie again, and being able to do something which was really tough, which was, we did about, I don't know, 15, 20 miles a day, and, not being at the physical top of my shape anymore. It was a real challenge, but we all got through it together, and it was nice to work on something hard like that again with other veterans.
Got it. Wow. I mean, you said something there that was very compelling, where you're there, you're recovering from injuries. I'm sure you're rattled, and then you feel like just a little. The backpack was enough to kind of bring you back into a normal sort of way of thinking, so to speak. And I guess
absolutely,
yeah, that's interesting. And I I was never in the military, but I can only imagine that all that training, all that experience, all that kind of led you to that moment, and there's no training for that. How do you train to recover from an injury like that or experience like that? So something like that, simple as a backpack, is so impactful. That's really incredible. Just maybe just a little bit more on that, Jason. I'm curious, because you have within that, I'm sure that there's a lot of stress, and you're transitioning from not only just when you left the military becoming to civilian life, but sort of the transition from active duty to now your recovery. How did you lean on the Wounded Warrior Project to sort of help you through that from a stress perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to go back a little bit, when I first got back from being wounded, my first experience with PTSD was going to a grocery market in Germany. And I started hearing all the sounds, people talking, the cell phone, and my brain started separating them as each individual sounds rather than just hearing it all at once. And I had my first panic attack. When I got home and started going with Wounded Warrior Project, they introduced a huge support structure, which I think is important in any type of stress management, is whether it's family, friends, or other veterans and organizations. Building a support structure is very important to helping with either PTSD or just the stress of transitioning back to civilian life. Another thing that's really helped me that I've learned from Wounded Warrior Project is continuing therapy, seeing the psychologists and psychiatrists, and also meditation. Meditation really helps calm things down, and I do it daily.
Yeah, incredible. That one thing you mentioned there, and Aaron, I'd love your thoughts on this as well. That's sort of that transition back to civilian life, and the fact that the prior 6, 8, 10 years to that, you had very defined roles, very sort of structured existence, really, where you have a lot of what you're going to be doing sort of laid out for you, and that concept of sort of staying in your lane is well defined. Did you have that struggle as well, where you really now there's no lanes, right? You're back to being a civilian, and you literally maybe it sounds enticing that the world is your oyster, but at the same time it's a little scary, a little intimidating, because a lot of that stuff is not laid out for you. I'm wondering if you have thoughts around that.
Yeah, definitely. I think about that one movie. I can't remember the name of it, but where he's standing in the cereal aisle, and there's just like 100 boxes of cereal, and he doesn't know
what to do. I think it's
yeah, and that's a nice juxtaposition about when you come home from the military world and there's life, and you're in this whole big world, and you have no structure anymore. You have no one giving you orders. You have really no place to be. So it's definitely very hard, especially when you lose all your brothers and sisters that you served with over the years, and you guys have kind of we like to call embrace the suck together, and you really build tremendous bonds with people like that. And to lose them and lose those bonds is very difficult. Coming back again, I just would like to stress the support structure, friends, family, organizations, just to kind of get you back on the path to becoming a civilian.
Aaron, how much of that, I'm sure it's it's sort of very deliberate how you guys look at that as an organization. But I'm curious, how is that? And we didn't really discuss this. And for the record, for our CFC fans out there, anybody listening, we have a very quick sort of discussion prior to this, us going live. But a lot of times, I'm just sitting here thinking, going, wow, like, how do you guys even iterate on your project? Meaning, how do you get better? How do you improve? I imagine you're always thinking about how can we do a better job for our warriors. But like, taking what Jason just said in terms of like, you need this sort of, basically all his family, so to speak, just disbanded, right? And now it's like, how do you, pardon the expression, how the hell do you do that? Like, how do you try to replicate some of that? But I'm curious from an organizational perspective, how you guys look at that.
Absolutely. And so you really hit the nail on the head. Wounded Warrior Project is constantly evaluating our programs. I mean, inside we say like every Wounded Warrior Project program is a pilot, right? So if it's not meeting the needs of our warriors, then we're not going to do it. We're not going to continue to do it. And so where do we get this information? So we're very data driven in our approach to things. And so we survey our warriors every year. Wounded Warrior Project has the largest survey of post 9/11 veterans that's out there. And the amount of information that we glean from that is incredible. So it helps us learn, what are our, we call our veterans alumni in Wounded Warrior Project. And so what are our alumni currently struggling with? And so mental health challenges are certainly kind of, top of the list. And then also physical challenges, pain, difficulty sleeping. And so we take that information in, and then we look to structure our programs in ways that will target those issues and those problems, for our alumni. We survey our alumni after our events. They're the ones that are driving this. If this isn't helpful for them, we're not going to continue it. And we know, as Jason mentioned, that transition from military to civilian life is difficult under the best of circumstances. And, even our veterans that come home to a solid family structure and a solid support system in place still struggle for what Jason described. Your family that you come home to didn't share those experiences that Jason described. And so that's why that connection piece is just so critical to all components of our programming. We want veterans to know that they're not alone, that they can grow into this sort of new normal, as we call it, that they can grow in that together, again, that they're not alone. And I think if we're just talking about the mental health piece and really even the physical health piece, if you know that you're not the only one struggling to lose weight, if you're not the only one struggling to get back into a physical routine, if you know you're not the only one struggling with the invisible wounds of war, whether that's post-traumatic stress or depression or anxiety, knowing you're not alone, it can be very curative. And having easy access to these programs, I think, is also what Wounded Warrior Project prides itself on. Again, we don't want cost. We don't want where you live to be a barrier. So we offer virtual programs. We take the events to where our veterans live so that they can come out together and rebuild that sense of camaraderie that they had in the military. Right.
You mentioned sort of gathering data, and the technology nerd in me wants to circle back onto that just briefly. But excuse me, before doing that, I was curious about the Warrior Care Network. If you could just share a little bit about that, because I know that's one of the programs that has really been tremendous for you guys. So if you could just give us a little color on Warrior Care.
Yeah, absolutely. So Wounded Warrior Project invested in this partnership with 4, again, world-renowned academic medical centers in an effort to provide high-class, empirically supportive, effective treatment for veterans struggling with PTSD, the other invisible wounds of war, and traumatic brain injury. And so we've partnered with Emory Healthcare in Atlanta. We've partnered with Rush University Medical Center in Chicago, UCLA Health in California, and then Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. And this, the Warrior Care Network offers an intensive outpatient program, an IOP, to treat PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and these other disorders. And in this 2 to 3 week program, it depends on what site you're at, participants receive over 70 hours of clinical care in 2 to 3 weeks. And so again, using empirically supported treatments such as cognitive processing therapy, prolonged exposure therapy, along with other complementary services like Jason mentioned, meditation, mindfulness training, equine therapy with horses, a family component, because we know that these symptoms don't just happen in a vacuum with the veteran. We want to involve their family as their support system so that everybody's kind of speaking the same language. Everybody knows kind of what was going on and how best that family can be supportive to the veteran. And so these programs are wildly successful. They're reducing symptoms of PTSD from a severe range to a mild range of post-traumatic stress symptomology. It's increasing quality of life. It's increasing the individual's sense of resiliency. And these programs, again, 2 to 3 weeks, where they leave their families, we pay for them to go to treatment to where it's going to best meet their unique needs at one of these 4 sites. Over 90% of participants complete the program. That's double the national average for traditional therapy. And I think, for what anybody could take away from hearing about the Warrior Care Network, I have 2 statistics that I think make the biggest difference. So we have the 90% complete, and then over 95% of those that complete the program are satisfied with the care that they receive, and they would tell a fellow veteran about the program. And that's really, a word, the recommendation from another veteran truly is like gold. If somebody completes it and they say, hey man, this was really helpful to me, you should go. I know it sounds really scary, 2 to 3 weeks of confronting your trauma. And they were satisfied, and they got better. And so there's an incredible amount of hope in that.
That's great. Jason, I'd ask you, again, and as a point of reference, I have these stresses and I did not go near Iraq, right? Like just the commute from New Jersey to Brooklyn sometimes drives me crazy, right? That's enough for me. But for you, I think if you could just touch on something which I think is very interesting, because you are military veterans and you are warriors. And I think that there's this sort of notion that, I'm kind of tougher than that. I don't need this kind of help. Like, there's a stigma maybe associated with reaching out for help. But what Aaron mentioned in terms of one of your, your peers saying, hey, you should really do this, man. This was really great for me. Like, maybe just talk a little bit about that. Was that something? Did something like that open up for you, where you said, I need to reach out and try to address this because it's an issue? Like, maybe is the sentiment changing a little bit in the military around that? Are you seeing that yourself?
Yes, I still have some friends that are active duty, and mental health has really made a lot of progress in the military. Back when it was called shell shock, they just thought, hey, get your stuff together and get back on it. And the military has really changed in their viewpoint on that. So mental health has become one of their priorities, and they have a lot of clinics on bases and stuff like that where soldiers can go talk about their issues that they have, after long deployments or even in between. So, yeah, definitely. As far as the Warrior Care Network is concerned, I actually heard about it from a buddy of mine, John, and he recommended that I go. So that was, hearing that from him sealed the deal for me. I didn't realize in the beginning how much work it was going to be, but I'm glad that it was a lot of work. We were in class from 8 to like 6:30 at night, and it was very intense. We saw a lot of different doctors. There was even a physical aspect of it where we went and worked out at a gym for an hour. But the therapy was really intense, and there was also psychiatry on deck to help with medications and things of that nature. Funny story. It was kind of like a movie. One of the psychologists, Dr. Edward, he took me to Fenway Hall in Boston, and because one of my problems is being around crowds. So he took me to the hall, and he walked beside me and talked me through just walking through the hall. Like, hey, what are you feeling right now? What are you thinking? Does that person look suspicious? Does that backpack bother you? And it really helped with me being in crowds. I mean, he would do that a few times a week. And the total stay was about 2 weeks. And my family was able to come out too. My wife was able to come out for a weekend, and we went to a horse farm in New Hampshire and did some equine therapy. And it was just great to have my support network there with me to help me through the issues, and also to inform her of, what PTSD and TBI can, and how it can affect veterans, and how it could affect her husband, really. So the biggest thing I took away from Warrior Care Network that I think is a lot different than other programs, though, is the aftercare. They recommended to me based on my insurance needs and things like that, doctors in my local area that could assist me further after I was finished with Warrior Care Network. So that was a big thing. A lot of other organizations or programs, you'll go through the program, but then it's like you're leaving the military again when you leave. All those veterans that you met, you're saying goodbye to, and then there's no follow-up. So the great thing about Warrior Care Network was the follow-up and the additional help that they offered after I was out of the program.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that the consistency around that is probably the most important thing, because we can all get great advice or great tidbits or nuggets of information, but then if it's not reinforced, or you're not revisiting it or learning how to kind of action it moving forward, then it may be lost. So that's really tremendous that Aaron, your organization, does that type of follow-up. I wanted to circle back on something you mentioned around technology. And again, I'm a technology guy, so pardon my nerdiness, but I know that Wounded Warrior Project is a Salesforce.org client. I'm alumni from Salesforce, and I'm super proud. And we've met, and Litify.org in many ways is modeled off of the Salesforce.org approach. But Aaron, just a little bit on maybe just how you guys use technology. And then you mentioned data-driven decisions, which was a very sort of specific term that now I love seeing, out sort of in the broader NGO space for sure. But I love the fact that you guys are thinking about that and leveraging the Salesforce platform to gather data, to action that data, to understand maybe where you can allocate resources. But I was just curious if you could just give us a little color on that.
Absolutely. So data-driven for sure. And so, we have numerous anecdotal stories. I mean, Jason is a testament to that. And so in no way am I minimizing the value of hearing those personal stories. But when we want to invest donor dollars that people have reached into their own pockets to give, to humbly give to this mission, we want to make sure we're putting that money into the programming that's going to reach our veterans and help the veterans the most. Mm-hmm. And so Salesforce really allows us to house all of this data. It allows us to run various reports. One thing that I've found helpful with it, we can run a report of where our veterans, the zip codes that they live in, so that we can easily decide, is this particular location a great place to bring warriors together, versus just picking a place on a map going, I hope they show up. We want to bring it to them. We want to make sure that this is, again, accessible. And so Salesforce allows us to run kind of heat maps on where our alumni live and how we can get in touch with them. It houses all of our kind of survey data, so I can pull those numbers about the PTSD score changes and the survey results from our Project Odyssey, because again, these are the things that drive our programs. And so being able to easily access those, that we're all reporting on the same numbers, really helps streamline the process, and again, really helps us make decisions that ultimately benefit our warriors. We keep notes in there so that if another teammate was working. So if I use Wounded Warrior Project Talk, for example, so we keep very sort of, basic notes in there, protecting everyone's confidentiality about what was discussed. But if that teammate is out sick and we don't want to miss that 20-minute appointment, we can have another teammate fill in, and they can kind of get up to speed on what that warrior was talking about. Because again, we said we were going to be there, and we said we were going to call you on Tuesday at 10 a.m. And so, we don't want to miss that. And so we're going to make sure that you have kind of a sense of what this individual is working on. So, I can't stress that ease of accessing this data really is critical to our programming.
That's great. It's great to hear. And I think that, obviously I'm biased, but, the ability to have that running narrative around somebody, well, like you said, somebody else steps in, they can sort of see where maybe treatment has occurred and maybe what's sort of on the to-do list. And then I love that concept of a heat map and identifying where, would make sense just logistically to do things, which is funny because I'm sure, Jason, that fits very well into the military mantra of logistics and things making sense and being programmatic around that stuff. So that's, again, any structure that we can provide here, I guess that's a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. I'd love for you both to comment, and this is, and all of our Liticasts and conversations for changes that we've done. We've tried over the past few months not to focus too much on the pandemic, just because I think everybody's sort of dealing with it and we don't want to belabor the point. But I am curious if both of you, maybe Jason, you could first comment on, how has it affected the veterans, those that have served? I know that, many of these issues are going to remain regardless of a pandemic or not, but I'm just curious your take on how COVID has impacted, you, your colleagues, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The pandemic, for me anyways, has had a negative impact, just from the standpoint of, being isolated. Anyone that takes the virus really seriously, you're going to, social distance a lot. And so that kind of goes against, what we've learned in therapy, where, we have to kind of break through barriers that scare us and get out amongst the people and start living a life again. So the pandemic has definitely put a kind of a stifle on that. But there are still things that you can do, veterans can do, especially. I know like a lot of the local vet centers are still open, and they have group therapy classes there. They do social distancing correctly, where you wear masks and everything else. And so there's still a way to get out there and see other veterans. And there are also some good social distancing programs from the Warrior Project as well, like the talk program and things like that. So I'd also recommend, videoing, conferencing with your friends, or, messaging on other social platforms. So the most important thing is to feel like you're connected still. And the pandemic really makes that hard, not just for veterans, but for everybody. So
right.
Yeah, that's definitely my opinion on that. Just still find your support wherever you can.
Right. Aaron, your thoughts?
Absolutely. So I would echo everything that Jason said. And I really appreciate, Jason, how you described that this imposed kind of social distancing and isolation for everyone's, physical health and well-being is very counterintuitive to what these therapeutic approaches for the invisible wounds of war talk about, which is to not isolate, which is to not sort of become sort of reclusive in your safe space, to really continue to get out and get involved. And so, Wounded Warrior Project has adapted to that and pivoted to offering some virtual programming because, again, we know that isolation it doesn't really improve your mental health. It's having, benefits for our physical health at this point. But in order to keep our mental health, where it should be, we need that sense of connection. And Wounded Warrior Project was able to quickly pivot to offer virtual programs. We already had our talk program in place. We, pivoted to virtual Project Odysseys. And then I would say, even prior, well before the pandemic, Wounded Warrior Project has partnered with organizations across the country that offer no-cost mental health counseling to veterans and their families. And they had already adapted to telehealth. And so we're still able to get our alumni connected to that mental health support through telehealth. And I think that that's probably one of the benefits of this pandemic is mental health providers also had to pivot. And so these telehealth has become more secure, it's more commonplace. The technology is more easily accessible so that you're not feeling alone and you're still getting that support.
Yeah, everybody's pivoting, right? I mean, I'm sure that, your organization is no different. I just think that the stakes are so high, with what you're doing that, and Jason, I commend you for trying to stay connected in any way you can, because it's difficult when just dealing with work issues, much less, having to deal with some therapeutic things. So I would ask this to both of you, and Jason, you're certainly a testament to this, but, maybe Aaron, where can our veterans go? Where can they go for help? What should they do? What tactically should they do at this point if they feel they need help?
Sure. And so first and foremost, our website, woundedwarriorproject.org, provides easily accessible information about all of our programming, all of our services. It has our resource center's phone number on there where you can call 888-997-2586 and get connected to one of our teammates to help you figure out sort of what program and what service is going to be the best for you. And as Jason said, this is really the time to continue to reach out for help, whether it's going to Wounded Warrior Project, whether it's FaceTiming your friends or family, to not, again, feel like you have to do this on your own, or you have to wait until, everything reopens to get this support. There are resources out there. And I think, what Jason has really explained is that treatment works, and there is hope. And being able to tell that story, to not shy away from talking about mental health, is something that everybody can do to help reduce that stigma and encourage people to reach out for the help that they need.
Got it. And on that note, what can we do? What can Litify, our clientele, our partners? We're building a pretty big ecosystem of you, mostly in the legal world, but maybe specific to that. But I'm curious what our community can do for you.
I think anyone can do to support that veteran community is to spread the word that veterans aren't alone in dealing with post-traumatic stress, and that there are these resources available. And I think something to keep in mind when the legal community is interacting with a wounded veteran, just kind of know that their journey might be a little bit different. And certainly it doesn't, excuse inappropriate behavior, but it certainly provides some context around sort of how somebody got to where they are, and that we can redirect and get on a path that leads to resilience and recovery and connection, and that, you're not past the point of no return, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense, 100%. Jason, and any final thoughts or comments from your side?
No, I'd just definitely like to say that I appreciate, the country that we live in right now, how they've treated their veterans is a stark contrast to when people like my father were coming home from Vietnam. There's just huge support for veterans, tons of resources out there. You just got to do the legwork and look for yourself. And I think, just words from other veterans and even civilians about possible places you can get help or definitely get connected is very important.
I would say, Jason, that taking care of our veterans, in my mind, is table stakes. I mean, that's, it's great, and I agree with you that we're doing a lot more now. But I would think that, and I'm no expert on the topic at all, but I would imagine we could do a lot more. So taking care of people who've made the type of commitment that you have, for me, is an absolute no-brainer, and it's something that, as a civilized country, we should be doing that, day and night for sure. And Aaron, your organization really should be commended. Just incredible work that you're doing. Humbles someone like myself and makes me motivated to see what I could do personally to help. With that, I wanted to thank you both again. Jason, thank you for your service. Aaron, thank you for the great work that you're doing, to you and your colleagues. I really do appreciate it. Farah, to our translator, thank you very much. She's waving, saying, doing great work there as well. But we will wrap with that. Actually, Christine, can you put the website up one more time? I saw it up briefly for a moment before, but this is the website. There we go, the www.woundedwarriorproject.org. So to our audience, please go there, see how you can help. If even $1 would help, or even, some time that you can allocate, or certainly in the legal community, our law firms and legal professionals that we work with, if you could allocate some of your time, I'm sure that would go a long, long way with helping our veterans and helping them, kind of get reacclimated or really get sort of back in the flow of things. But Jason, Aaron, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You got it. Thank you. Bye-bye.